Hello and welcome to the Wise Why. We're slightly late this morning because my mouse wouldn't work. I love technology and I love the fact that it will let me down particularly live. So this morning I am joined by an incredible man. I have known him for years. I'm not even going to even hedge or think about how many years. What I do know is he inspires me because he is resilient. Stuart Derricott is a man who has been knocked down and he's got up again. And yes, I'm now hearing the song. So I hope if you're tuned in, so are you. But as
Yep.
usual, this is not about me. This is about my guest. So Stuart, the floor is yours.
Well, Stuart Derricott. I'm currently 58. Hopefully, not looking it. So I sort of work for a company that we do technology for hotels. I sort of realised working for sort of Sony and people like that in an earlier life that actually I really love hotels, visiting them and seeing how they work and stuff like that. So that's what my sort of company does. We sort of take hotels that if you look at sort of when you go and stay in a hotel and you see somebody coming down the corridor and they've got a piece of paper on a clipboard and things, we take them from that to sort of like automating everything and saving time, money, and all the rest of it. Been sort of doing business for 40 odd years nearly. First ever job was working in a builders merchants at a college. And then through that into sort of like management and things as well. So I'm sort of looking forward to retirement, but not looking forward to retirement because I just don't ever want to switch off. And I always want to have that sort of, wow moment every day, or that sort of like enjoyment every day. And I still get that. So until I stop getting that, I think, you just carry on, keep going. So yeah, I mean, ask whatever you like. I think we know each other well enough to know that I'm a completely open book. And very honest about sort of everything. I think it's the only way you can be is sort of honest and straightforward, and sometimes it's not sort of what you say, it's how you say it. So you have to sort of say things in the right way. But I'm here to, you ask me whatever you want to ask me, and I'll sort of tell you whatever I know, if that's anything. So
Well, one of the things that really strikes me, as you know, is your resilience. And we met when I think you were kind of on the up, and I was
yeah.
definitely on the down.
Mm-hmm.
I had no confidence, and this is what people don't realise. They see me doing the Wise Why, they see
Yeah.
me on video, they see me promoting the business, and they think that I'm this extrovert. But actually, you know me as the real introvert.
Mm.
So the real. Actually, the real Kirsty. And I'm going to say it, Elkin, because in those days I was.
Yeah. No, this is pre-marriage, absolutely. And the weird thing was, I was actually sort of like, when I was answering your emails and everything, I was like, God, what was Kirsty's name before? And I actually had to think for a minute and think, actually, yeah, when I met you, that was who you were. And you came to me sort of at a time when I was in sort of a reasonably high position in company and running the UK operation, and this person comes along who sort of is after a job and is clearly very skilled and knows things, but had really taken a few knocks. And my thought process along that was, well, okay, well, she's got the skills, she's got the thing, she just needs the help with the confidence, because somebody's pushed that confidence out of you. And and having had people sort of pull me up and through bad times and everything, I just thought at the time, yeah, she's got everything we need. Why sort of put a doubt in there because something's external is causing you issues? And why can't we be the answer to those issues or the help with those issues and get things sort of back on an even keel for you, which happened, and the job you did was fantastic. So it was absolutely no issue from it at all.
Thank you. But this is interesting because this is where our friendship developed, because obviously I met you on stand,
Yeah.
and then the friendship developed, and then the friendship, and then this is what people don't realize is you can make friends at work. And, then as I was getting my confidence and growing and finding my feet, and I think I was doing my degree at the time, suddenly your life was blown up. Your
Yeah.
whole life went crashing down, and I was there to repay. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was sort of like, I mean, I had a series of events, and I always say sort of life happens. You can sort of do whatever you want to do to prepare for things, but there's always going to be unexpected. There's always going to be things that sort of don't go the way you expect them to go, etc. And within the space of a few years, it was like, well, I'm sort of made redundant, go through a divorce. My sort of ex-wife decided that she didn't want to bring up our son, who was at the time 6, so he ended up coming to live with me. And I then came to you for work, and you became sort of my manager, and like a complete role reversal.
I
You know,
forgotten.
yeah. So you know, if you, I was actually, you know, doing sort of install work and everything to sort of help support my son and everything, and you know, I'd gone from what I thought was a sort of like a good marriage situation to sort of, you know, for whatever reason, and I'm not going to mention names or blame anybody for anything, because everybody in their own time has their own reasons for things happening and things. And you know, so I'm sort of then struggling, sort of like in a situation where I'm with a 6-year-old child who's sort of, again, got no confidence, who finds it difficult to sleep at night because he's got stress, you know, to having to do all of the school runs, to sort of like trying to work at the same time, all of these things going on, which really does open your eyes as well to sort of how things are. Because, you know, when you turn up at the school gate and you're the only dad, and there's all of these sort of like mums, and then when there's sort of everyone's like, oh, let's go and do this as a group, and it's like, well, hang on a second, do we invite this guy? Because, you know, this is a bit of a weird situation. So lots of weird, you know, things to negotiate and stuff like that. And you know, eventually Sam, you know, became sort of 100% with me, and you know, through the courts, etc. And slowly you rebuild, and part of that rebuild was, you know, sort of me sort of doing bits of work where I could with, you know, in-store work, and you sort of helping with that. And it was, you know, it was almost sort of like, yeah, you came back to repay me. And I think that's how people, you know, people are. If you do good things to people, you know, it will come back at you. You know, and there's a thing on my wall here that I sort of look at, and I sort of try and keep in mind or everything. It says, you know, do things for people not because of who they are or what they can do in return, but because of who you are. And I think that is far more important, because, you know, it gives you so much more back as a human being to sort of think, okay, I did that, I helped there, I did this, etc. But actually, yeah, I mean, it may come back and help you, but that's not the real reason why you do things. So yeah, so I mean, yeah, and now I'm sort of back in a senior role. Sam's 18. He's doing his A levels, just applying for universities. You know, I've got the most amazing, sorry, this is probably where I'll get emotional, most amazing woman in my life, who has been there and helped me, and you know, is my support and rock and everything when I need to go places. You know, looking after somebody else's 18-year-old is, you know, grumpy in the mornings, teenager, is difficult, you know, but we sort of all muck along and everything. So life's pulled back up, everything's great and everything, but you never know what's around the corner. You never know what's around the corner. And so you have to sort of like, you know, build some sort of resilience, not lose emotion, not lose the connection to sort of what it is that's sort of causing issues and things like that. And, you know, and I've seen people sort of think resilience is a wall. It's something that's sort of there to block out the world. It's not. It's 100% not. It's just sort of learning to understand that, you know, things will get better. And that's something I do think you do get with age, as perspective and things like that. And, you know, I tend to work these days on a sliding scale of 1 to death. And I just say sort of, okay, well, you know, if 1's over here and death's over there, really, where is this issue? Where is this thing? And 99% stuff is way down this end. It's really, you look back at it in 6 months, it's nothing. It will have affected your life in no great deal. So it is about perspective, and it's all about sort of like knowing, you know, that things will get better. You know, tomorrow's going to be a better day, you know, the next day even better. And there are days when, you know, I literally sort of wake up and look out the window, taking a breath and think, you know what, breathing is enough. Actually, it really is, you know, having the great view out in the garden, the you know, the breathe sort of like seeing, you know, the people you love sort of, you know, get up in the morning and give you a smile. It's enough. Everything else, it's a bonus.
So I'm going to ask a personal question. You can tell me to go. You can tell me, no, I don't want to answer that. Because I always say to people, if it's a question you don't want to answer, please say no. But do you think the trauma that you've experienced when you were younger has taught you about this naught to death?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, just to put in perspective and explain. So when I was 11, my sort of eldest sister died. She was rock climbing the Lake District. Had a fall. The sort of, you know, mountain rescue tried to sort of get there in time, but unfortunately, they, you know, these guys do great work, but there's some occasions where, time isn't on the side, etc., because of the injuries and things involved. And that sort of, if you're 11 years old and you lose, I mean, I'm one of 5 kids. So, when the eldest, the person everybody looks up to, and she was in her early 20s, just married recently, gone through university, the sort of person you're sort of like, wow, this is my big sister. And then about another 10, 11 years after that, my eldest brother died in a plane crash. So those sort of things really, yes, they do shape you. They sort of, and it's sort of, people, I speak to people sometimes about grief. I did a sort of bit of work after sort of me and my brother died, helping sort of people through grief and things like that. And I think having that sort of connection and having been through it myself, and I would explain to them what I, endured and what had happened to me and things like that. And it means you can connect with them a little bit better. But that sort of thing does really shape you. And that's what sort of makes me think, and just to give you a sort of an idea, I sort of like my sort of brother, so I've got 2 surviving brothers, and my sort of now elder brother sent me a message on my birthday earlier this month, and he said, yeah, happy birthday. And I wrote back sort of like 58, Jesus Christ, all this sort of thing. And he just wrote back, yeah, but it's better than the alternative. And it really is better than the alternative, And also I think that thing that happened, those things that happened early on, it's very much to me sort of, you have a duty to do things, that they can't do, to sort of live a little bit of your life for them in a way, because they're not here to do it. So, you need to sort of like sometimes just go, okay, this may be tough, or this thing may be causing me to feel, something, but they aren't there to feel it. They aren't there to do that. And there is always, and there will always be with grief, things that get to you, things that sort of just, you never know when it's going to hit you, when it's going to just get. And I don't think you ever get over grief. You just learn to sort of like, it sort of goes over to the side and it's always there. And, I mean, there's a song which when it goes, and it can be in the car, it could be absolutely anywhere. And it's This Woman's Work by Kate Bush. And it's the song that was, sort of like playing the when I heard that my brother had died. And then we sat and we played it all that night, because I'd been out and I was living up in Yorkshire. I couldn't get home, till I'd sobered up, because we'd been out clubbing and stuff. So that song will just trigger me straight away. And there will always be things like that will trigger you, that will just make you think, But one of the things I sort of like learn is that, it's not a bad thing, because that means you're still connected to your emotions. You still think about the person, you still care and love for that person. And actually, it's sort of like, it also brings back the good memories, the good things, the things that make you think, oh God, yeah, sort of this, that. So it's not something that you just think is going to just wrap up and put away and sort of like, okay, I'm great now. Never really happens. It's something that you carry with you all of your life, and you just learn to live and grow and have that sort of, shape your opinion a little bit, or give you a bit of sort of like a perspective on things, really, that how important is, stubbing your toe, how important is your tire blowing out, how important are all of these things, which, every day we're all like, oh God, really, is it that important? Because, the alternative really is not that great. So yeah, that's where I sort of come from.
Oh, thank you. Because I think, I don't talk about it in depth, but there was a trauma that happened in my childhood when I was 5, and it wasn't about me not being able to speak, although that happened at the same time. And that does and has shaped my life. And I talk a lot which why I asked you the question, actually, because I talk about boundaries. And this is a nice moment to bring it in, of why we should always have boundaries, because you got emotional about talking about Janet, who is just, hopefully I got her name right. Please tell me I got her name right.
Well, I mean, you got very drunk with her at your wedding, so I'm hoping you sort of, remember what her name is.
So do I. That would be awful if I couldn't. But we don't necessarily. The emotions are really important. I got triggered just before Christmas. Wasn't expecting it.
Yeah.
Didn't realise it was bubbling under the surface. I'd done one of these whys, and the person in the morning had talked about a car accident, which had obviously relates back to my childhood trauma, which I won't go into because I've got that boundary, and that's out of respect for my parents. And then later on, something else happened in the evening, and 2 events sent me spiraling. And I'm quite good, you know, I'm in control of my grief. But no, I was lost, and the next day in bed with a massive migraine because.
Excuse me 1 second, by the way, I've got a really bad cold. So not a very good thing to do on camera, but you know.
I don't know. At this time of year, I think
than the alternative. So
I think I have my tissues out of shot. I think at this time of year, we've all got a horrific cold. So thank you very much for sharing that. And obviously, we've talked about your whys because that's all been beautifully wrapped up. Then we talked about Janet, but let's talk a little bit more about Janet, because I know that when she came into your life, and we're going to talk about how incredible she really is. And please, if you feel that you're getting emotional, just tell me to stop. But she has absolutely changed your life. She really has. It's not like a little bit. I remember you telling me about this person, and you're very secretive, and you were very careful, and you were like, and you were nervous. And I think that's really lovely to share how nervous you are, because she really just has turned your life around, hasn't she?
Well, I mean, like, you know, you've just come out of the back of a divorce, which, you know, there's children involved, and it's sort of, you know, and you're having to do some things which, you know, aren't pleasant. You know, you're having to go through sort of courts and things like that, because sometimes these things just don't resolve themselves in the right way. And then you meet this sort of incredible person who sort of, you know, and you know, Janet's a nurse. She sort of works very long hours. She's in a very giving profession. She's an excellent nurse. I mean, you know, she's just incredibly good. Nags me a little bit about my diet too much, but you know, that's a different thing. But that's out of care and love, because she wants me to sort of be around for as long as possible and not, you know, contracting diabetes or anything like that. So she's very careful about sort of, you know, that sort of thing. But, you know, I'm in a place that I'm trying to get myself back established in life, and, you know, trying to look after a child, you know, and a child who'd gone through trauma. And having sort of been through trauma in an earlier life myself, I could sort of get that. You know, and you're talking about as a child who would find it difficult to sleep, and would literally sort of say to me, sort of like, you know, I've got a tummy ache, you know, I want to go sort of to the doctors. And this is like 8 o'clock at night. And, you know, kids will often with trauma, it will say, I've got tummy ache or something like that. It manifests in different ways. So, you know, I was literally having to put him in the car and drive him around till he fell asleep, telling him we were going to the doctors and everything. And I'm doing that, don't worry, and stuff. And, you know, you've got somebody who then will come and sort of like develop enough of you that they take on that difficult situation as well. You know, and you know, he's 18 now, and but he's now sort of gone from sort of being a sort of slightly traumatized child to a really sort of like clever kid who's really lovely. But you know, an 18-year-old first thing in the morning, sort of like, you know, when they don't really want to get up for school, you know, it's so, you know, you've got this to look forward to, I know.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, so somebody who's taken on all of that and all of your history and the issues is, you know, you have a lot of sort of like respect for them and everything. But also, I mean, my biggest part of the respect is that she goes out every day, every single day. I mean, I literally say to people, you know, if Janet, you know, had her leg sort of like freakishly lopped off first thing in the morning, and you know, anything, she would hop to work, because she's that committed to helping people. And you know, sort of some days I know that she comes in and it's like, right, okay, don't speak, not for for an hour, just let her sort of like just process all these things she's had to deal with, and not sort of, you know, not her own issues, but everybody else's issues, everybody else's problems, everybody else's sort of, you know, difficulties that they've come in there. These are really sick people that she's dealing with. So to me, it's just sort of, okay, well, just put a bottle of, not a bottle, sorry, a glass of red wine on the table, you know, and I'm mainly the chef in the house, and working from home sort of, you know, means that I can, you know, be doing sort of cooking while I've got headphones in, or doing things, you know, preparing stuff and everything like that. and multitasking, strangely. And, you know, just I like to try and make sure she's got food ready, you know, that she sort of comes in, she can just relax. And then there'll come a point about an hour later where she will literally just go, anyway, how was your day? And she's sort of back in the room a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, somebody who sort of, you know, sort of knows me extremely well. We have our sort of moments, we have our arguments, we have our, like any sort of couple do. But I think it also gave me a sort of huge sort of thing that actually, you know what, you can go through all of that stuff and you can go through the divorce, but there's still things that are really great that can happen in your life and that can really sort of make you feel sort of like special. You know, and I just sort of like, I still sort of now, I mean, we've been together sort of, you know, quite a long time, but I still sort of put little notes in a lunch in the morning, or sort of like, you know, just things just to sort of like, just to sort of make her realize how much I really appreciate that person being, you know, I just come back from 3 days in Turkey, seeing our sort of sales director over there, and I couldn't do any of these things that I have to do, you know, without knowing that sort of like she's there just to sort of like make sure that he's out the door in the morning, that he's fed in the evening, that, you know, sort of like anything happens, there's somebody there covering things. So I've sort of gone from being a single parent to being sort of into a blended family. You know, Janet has 2 daughters who I really do treat and respect as my own, you know, in a lot of ways. So, you know, it can still happen. You however old you get, however, you know, sort of like bad you think life is, you can still have those moments where you're like, wow, you know, I've got this incredible person who's sort of backing me. You know, I've met Dennis. I know what a sort of amazingly fabulous bloke he is.
Yeah.
You know, if you know, if I was gay, I'd probably sort of grab him myself, which is wonderful. So
I hope he. No, I'm just going to put this in here. Dennis never watches The Wise Wife, so I'm going to tell him that one because. So one of the things that we're very separate in what we do, which is great because that's who we are. But you're absolutely right, and I've talked about Dennis before. He is my rock. I couldn't do any of the stuff that I do without him, and he's very similar. So when you were talking about 0 to death. Dennis's phase is, well, did someone die?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's very a bit blunter than that because he is Dutch. So it's a bit more like, yeah. And you tend to go, oh, that's a bit, oh, okay. But yeah, he is very much like, did someone die? And if they didn't die, then why are you making a big drama out of it? Which, considering how I can be, it's a very good balance. And it actually creates a really lovely home environment for our daughter because it is very calm. And she needs that. I definitely need that after the stuff that I went through. And it is interesting listening to you because I'd forgotten about the notes that you do for Janet because I do that for our daughter sometimes. Not often because at school she could get the Mickey taken out of her. So occasionally I will put a little note in and she finds it. She's like, she's still struggling to read a little bit, but she'll get there. You know, she's still a baby. And as you said,
listen, my boy's 18 and I still think he's a baby. My daughter's 25 and I think she's, you know, a baby. So it's like, you never lose that sort of thing with them. But, you know, Sam's sort of like, you know, at 18, he still sort of like says, you know, things like he'll be getting out of the car if I sort of drop him at the gym and something like that. And he'll be like, oh, like, see you later. Bye. Thanks. Love you. And and that's sort of like, you know, connection to your emotions is something I've always wanted to try and instill in the kids because, you know, there's times when you might not have that ability to say the words and say the things you mean. So say it while you can and celebrate it while you can, because, you know, you never know. Tomorrow, completely different day, different things can happen. So, you know, and I love the fact he does that. And that's why I try and do it and, you know, and send little notes and things, because it's just, people need to feel appreciated, loved and cared for. And I think even, you know, when you're sort of having an argument, I'll really sort of, you know, we can have arguments because we're a family. There's, you know, sort of things going on. There's pressures. Everybody's going to have those things, but they're not the important things. You know, those are temporary. Those are the little things that happen. But I'll completely try and throw Janet just by saying sort of like in the middle of an argument, you know, and she's trying to make a point. I'll just look at her and go, yeah, but I love you. And it just, you know, diffuse to try, you know, just throws her completely. But it's, you know, or send her a message, you know, and she does the same back at me. I mean, she sort of knows when I'm sort of like ratty or I'm sort of like, you know, my head's in another place and things. And, you know, she'll sort of just drop little notes and things. And I think that's just really important. I mean, you know, sometimes somebody said to me recently, sort of, do you not wish that you'd met her sort of 30, 40 years ago. And I was like, no, because I wouldn't have been the same person. And maybe she wouldn't have liked me, who I was then. And it's probably my experience that's turned me into the person she loves. So now is the right time for us to be what we are. And you know, I know that you know, that's the person I'm with for the rest of my life. That's the person that sort of I want to be around. You know, and I want to make sort of like arrangements, little, you know, I mean, one of my sort of favorite things is Christmas and sorting things out that I know are going to sort of make her feel something or sort of go, wow, you know, sort of etc. That's my one of my favorite things ever, because you know, it's about making that person feel appreciated and loved. I'm really silly about Christmas, you know. So she loves the decorations and all the rest of it. So, you know,
we put our tree up actually before Dennis's birthday, so it goes up on usually the first weekend of December. But then I'm really funny; it has to be down by the 28th of December because I want New Year to be fresh and clean. So
ours was January the 1st. Literally, it was down and packed away and back in the loft, you know. And the you know, real tree, but that's in the garden waiting for me to shred it sort of through the machine and everything and use it for mulch. So yeah, it just, you know, it almost is. I think Joe's exactly the same as me. It's sort of like, right, okay, so if we had the fun bit, sort of like we're in a new year, let's sort of like, you know, start off it on the right way. I mean, officially, I mean, my birthday's January the 5th, and officially I think that's 12th night, so it should be around my birthday that the tree's up to. But, and I think that's another thing as well, is because our birthdays are very close to each other and happen very early in the year. It's sort of like, okay, well, let's push Christmas away. And she knows that one of my biggest sort of annoyances as a kid was that so many people would be like, at Christmas, here's your present. Oh, by the way, it's for Christmas and birthday, because yeah, they were very close. So she really does make sure there's a separation in the two things, and that, you know, there's sort of different presents and everything's completely sort of, that's it. That's Christmas. It's now your birthday. So it's yeah. I love it. So
I think you've got to do that, because Dennis is early December and we definitely have birthday. And then we have Christmas, and there is even though it's at like 2 weeks or something, it is very, very separate. So just because we've been talking for 27 minutes, it's amazing how the time goes. I just want to touch very lightly on your career path, because we've talked. I mean, we can talk for hours, but
funny that, isn't it?
Yeah, funny that. Well, old friends. But I'd like to talk about your career path, because when I met you, you were in tech. You're now in hospitality, and there'll be lots of people here who feel that they don't have transferable skills. So I just want to touch on that a little bit, because you met me and you saw that I had transferable skills.
Yeah.
So it's explaining how you can use exactly the same skill set and transfer them.
I mean, you know, so a lot of my sort of what I do now is talking to people. When we met, I was working for sort of like, you know, in hardware, in sort of like physical items, you know, of technology. And now what I do is software, but it's sort of, you know, it's still sort of in hotels, but it's sort of those hotels sort of like taking all of what they do and making it sort of digital, making it sort of connected. Taking away a lot of manual process and things like that. But, you know, all of it is, from either sort of perspective, is really about talking to people about sort of like, you know, explaining concepts, about sort of understanding what it is they need, and then sort of, you know, taking that and everything. And I think, yeah, one of my favorite things has always been demonstrating stuff and showing things, how people how they work, you know. So in the sort of hardware arena, it was like pressing buttons and say, look, this does this, and now it's sort of like, you know, I screen share, or I'm on a sort of stage showing sort of, you know, how something operates, etc., in the software thing. And I really love that sort of moment when somebody gives it that sort of look and goes, oh wow, and they realize how this can help them. So I've sort of like carried all of those sort of things that, you know, I used to do in the hardware arena just over into the sort of software side of things. And I've always had quite a technical brain anyway. So even as a kid, you know, I'd sort of like take things apart and put them back together and just to see how they work and stuff like that. So my ability to understand and things is always been there. And I just think it's, you know, adaptability. And, you know, I think a lot of people don't realize the skills they have. You know, they sort of do things all day and do things and everything. And, you know, I've had people come to me who, oh, you know, and they say things, oh, yeah, but I've been, you know, sort of out of work for the last 5 years, bringing up X, or, you know, I've been doing this or whatever. And I'm like, well, no, you know, everything you're doing is transferable. You know, everything you do, every bit of information you're sort of like storing in your head about how to do things, you know, is transferable because you're picking up skills constantly. And I think you never stop learning. You never, ever stop learning, and picking up new skills and sort of developing things. Nobody knows everything. Everybody needs to sort of be open to sort of understanding things. I've been with this company 3 years now, and I have sort of people say to me, oh, new starters, how do I do that? And I'm like, oh, nobody's asked that. Hang on. So I have to find somebody to ask and stuff. So, be open-minded, always be sort of like open to sort of like new skills, and, anything you pick up is transferable. Everything you understand and do is transferable in some way. Don't think that sort of just because I did X, it doesn't mean I can do Y. It doesn't work like that. Honestly, it doesn't.
Brilliant. We've had a lovely comment from Joanne Baker, who said, my birthday is early December, and a combined birthday Christmas present is not cool. I totally agree.
Yes,
I really do.
Well, the worst part used to be that my sort of now long deceased auntie and uncle, God bless them, would always buy me the same present every single year, probably until I was about 10, which was brown matching underpants and vests with white piping every single year. That's for your Christmas and birthday.
Nice.
So yeah.
So I've got an image that I really don't need right now.
but I sort of like have this fear of those things now. I'd sort of like, if I ever saw those, I'd be like, oh God, no, because every year you knew what that package was going to be. It's I'll open those on my birthday.
Roll on your 60th.
Yeah. Watch it. So I don't know if you'll find any now, but
Oh, I can always make them. I do have a sewing machine over there. So I may just make some, especially if I can get it in that kind of polyester vinyl-y.
That sort of like probably banned, highly inflammable, don't put your child near any naked flames material. They every year the same present. It was just
I've got an image. Rolling your 60th.
Which you don't really want to keep in your mind. Right?
I really don't need that image at 9:30. Well, 10 o'clock in the morning. So this is where the tables get turned. And you've been speaking for 32 minutes. You've been in the hot seat. Mm-hmm. And this is where you get to turn the tables. We've now got echo, probably because I laugh too much. But you get to turn the tables on me and ask me a question.
So, I was thinking about this because you sort of said about potentially looking at sort of asking you some questions. I was thinking, okay, sort of, when you know somebody really, really well, and we've got some of those relationships that I can't see. I can not speak to you for 6 months, but then we speak to each other and it's like we spoke to each other yesterday. So the only thing I could really think of is to sort of like, is why this, that you're doing now, because you, I know you've old, I know sort of the jobs you've done, I know your history and stuff like that. And, what sort of like drove you to actually sort of start handing over a bit of your knowledge and your sort of like inspirations and things that have affected you in this way?
So it was an accident. I've been really open about this. Somebody I knew wanted to go live and I'd built the business. So due to things that had happened in our life, so we were supposed to move to Holland, but anyway, Dennis ended up getting a different job. So we didn't go to Holland. And then I found myself, like many people, I'd resigned from my job and I hadn't got a job to go to because I was supposed to be moving country. Then the pandemic hit and then I looked at my skill set and I was writing a company and I thought, well, this is what I'll do. Now, what's interesting about what I do now is it's actually my original business plan. But I went on a big journey due to COVID, which took me down a niched route, which was public speaking on camera and none of the marketing that I used to do, none of the strategy or the structure of the content and the strategy I used to bring in. So none of that was in what I was doing during COVID. And then we're coming out of COVID and somebody I knew wanted to go live on LinkedIn and they couldn't. And after a second glass of wine, I applied, then realized I'd got it, then had to come up with the concept. Thankfully, with a marketing background and an acting background, the concept was relatively quick for me. Yeah. The process of tech, because I'd worked in tech, and getting the tech again because I was an actor and I'd worked in tech, was again really easy for me to grasp and do. But
interesting you mentioned transferable skills, because this is all exactly what you're talking about here.
But what's interesting was the reason I didn't do a podcast and the reason I didn't do a live was because even though I'd worked in tech for years, even though I've done marketing for years, even though I've been a performer
Mm.
for years, the idea of doing a podcast was not for me. I was like, ooh, ooh, ooh. And it really did make me want to not do it, because it seemed like this big, huge thing that I would never understand. And actually, it's really simple. But the overwhelm and the fear was limiting. Anyway, I'd applied for it after a second glass of wine, got it. And then the platform and the show, the Wise Why has evolved. From the very first one, we have a script. Well, we don't have a script.
Yeah.
We have some questions. I've not looked at them once, because
I didn't look at them until this morning, by the way, about 5 minutes before we went live. So I was like, oh, is that what we're talking about? Okay.
Yeah, I don't want people to, because actually the whole thing is it's a coffee machine. It's that Friday morning that we're missing when we're remote workers, because I really miss this aspect of working in a team. But what I really did was I wanted to create a platform where, when I looked at all these podcasts out there, they were all about the host. They were all polished. They were all perfect. And actually, life isn't perfect. Life is imperfect. And nobody was really talking. Everyone was giving advice, but nobody was talking about what was really going on, the nitty gritty of what it's really like. And also, 90% of the people on podcasts were known. They were just in people that you would know their names. So let's tune into this podcast because so-and-so is famous. So the idea of this was to give a platform for us, just the user me's, the everyday person, the everyday Joe, the person who's doing the grunt work, who is living and existing. And I hope, well, actually, I don't hope, I know that a lot of people have taken a lot of power from this. It has helped people move on. It has helped people achieve. It has helped people work. So would I stop it? No. I don't intend to stop it, because I'm going to keep celebrating the user me's, because actually we're important.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I said, we were sort of obviously setting up before this and everything, and I said to you sort of like that I'm an open book. There's no you asked me if there was any limits, anything we didn't want to talk about and everything. I said no, absolutely not. There's I'm completely open and honest about everything. And I said to you at the time, sort of like, the key thing is for me is that everybody lives their own experience. Everyone sort of reacts in different ways and things. But if what I talk about and what you talk about helps somebody, who's going through that right now, or who's sort of like experienced that and finds things sort of difficult to focus on where they need to go and things, 100%, that's what it's about and things. And it's interesting because when I saw what you were starting to do and things like that, and the sort of like, the work on camera and things like that, I thought, well, that's exactly the right time to be doing it, because everyone's now having to work at home and suddenly appear on cameras and suddenly do things which have been out of their comfort zone. And everyone's gone from sort of like a face-to-face meeting where you sort of know what to expect to being in a little box. And how do you sort of handle that sort of thing? So I think the reason I asked you a question was to get your sort of feedback on it, but actually, I was pretty sure I knew that already, and your timing I thought was for it was pretty special anyway, so it's cool.
I was just very lucky. It was that moment in your life where we have it up in the village, we have these things called the fairy doors, and I was up there and we're going to overrun, but it's quite a funny story. So I was up there and I was explaining, because obviously being an actor, I was kind of explaining the story of the fairy doors, but more importantly going into calling one of them Titania's door and one of them Oberon, and talking about how people can be, because I was talking about referring Midsummer Night's Dream back to life, and talking about Puck, and I did say P-U-C-K there, Puck. I was talking about Robin Goodfellow. I have called him Robin Goodfellow, and there's a reason. I'll come on to that in a minute. But I was talking about Robin Goodfellow. I was talking about Titania and Oberon and how they were fighting, but they used to be in love, and now they're divorced, and just explaining it a little bit, because B was going to school, and she was going to go and meet blended families and families that might have two mummies or two daddies. So I wanted her to be a bit more prepared. But we were walking down from the fairy doors. And as we were walking down from the fairy doors, she stopped to tell somebody that I'd been telling, teaching her all about, and it was, instead of the purr, there was a fur up in the fairy door. So if you work that one out, so instead of a P-U-C-K, it was a fur something, something, something. They looked shocked. But it was that realization about communication. And I realized that actually I'd always taken jargon and tech and turned it into a language that was simplified. Here I was talking to my daughter, and I was just, it was that moment of realizing that actually I can blend my skills. I've got transferable skills. Why don't I launch this?
Yeah.
So yeah, again, daughter inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I get inspired by my kids. I get inspired. You know, my biggest inspiration, I think, in my entire life was always my mum. So, you know, you get that your inspiration from certain people, and I think, you know, you always keep those people in your mind when you're doing things and moving on with things and stuff like that. And it's you know, but don't get me onto my mum, because that really will.
I won't. We're gonna wrap it up and say thank you. So, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I knew this would be a blast. I knew it was going to be a very, well, actually, no, not a different Wise Why, because every Wise Why is unique and individual. That's what I wanted. So, thank you very, very, very much for sharing your story.
Enjoyed it, actually. So it's good.
Now I've got to try and get my mouse to work, which, yeah, this is going to be fun, because it really does not want to respond this morning. No, this is good. Right, I may have to.
I'm going to be live forever.
Well, do you know what? I have no idea. I got a new mouse, and it just does. Here we go. Right, my mouse is now working. That's a really lovely tie-in to the beginning of the show. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.